And we all, I think, appreciate the importance of umami. And what we're going to learn today is that human beings have appreciated the importance of umami for thousands of years in slightly different formats. So I'm going to introduce both of them, and then I'm going to get out of the way so that you can see their amazing presentations and get an in-depth sense of their knowledge. So Nathaniel Malone will be presenting first, and he serves as the corporate executive chef for Creative Dining Services, which is a niche contract food service company. He's based in Western Michigan, and I could read all of his responsibilities, but charge of the culinary quality, execution, implementation, all of those sorts of things. Nathaniel has a profound passion for exploring global and historical foodways, uncovering cultural stories behind ingredients and techniques. When he's not in the kitchen, he loves to forage. For any of you that came Marketplace, will have enjoyed some of the things that we talked about today. And then our friend Jordan Ezra King comes to us all the way from London. I'm glad TSA supported you in your transition. Jordan is a classically trained chef, worked in Paris and London, and at a certain point in his career, he moved to Mob Tet's kitchen, which a little bit more about that. And he now cooks and writes about food in his own best-selling newsletter called idea of cross-pollination. Similar things that call them different names, but and may largely taste similar. So a big round of applause, please, for our two presenters. One last note before I turn over the mic is that we are going to encourage questions at the end so they can focus on their dish and so forth. And when you ask a question, I'll repeat it, and then they can answer. Okay? Enjoy. Daniel.
Hey, guys. Everybody hear me okay? Awesome. So I want to start this by saying I am not a food historian by any means. I'm just like insatiably curious about things. And that really is what keeps me going as a chef and wakes me up in the morning, makes me think, what am I going to look at, work on, and think about next? And that insatiable curiosity has taken me down a path of this ancient umami idea, right? Where does the word, I mean, we all know umami, right? We're familiar with the fifth taste umami. That's nothing surprising anymore. But man, it's been around for thousands of years. It's always been a thing, but we just didn't know what it was. And so I think the first time I came into contact with the word garum was in Noma in Copenhagen makes a smoked mushroom garum. And years ago I tried it on a menu and I was like, what the? Oh my gosh, it's like ridiculously deep and interesting, and it just blew my absolute mind. And so then my curiosity takes over, and I'm like, what is garum? You know, like I really didn't have that much experience with it, and the word was new to me at that time. And so going down that rabbit hole of curiosity, there's just so much that happens with fish sauces and fermented sauces in general around the world. I mean, garum was being made thousands of years ago. We're talking about like 500 BCE Greece. They were making the thing. Then the Romans came in and they took over and they started making garum factories, literal factories all over the place. They had some laws like you had to have it so many miles away from the city centers because of the smell, I assume. But it just goes to show you that this idea of umami has been around forever. And why did they have that, right? And then I've taken that even further in some of my, like Chef said, I love to forage. I go crazy with foraging. I like to be in the woods whenever I can be. And I've made my own types of garums. So this curiosity path has taken me down some really, sometimes very dark and funky places. Sometimes they don't work. Sometimes you learn from that process. But I will give you a PSA today. So I am going to spill blood and guts on stage today because it's a very important talking point for what I'm doing. So if you have a little squeamish, you know, you can look away or whatever. But it's the story of like waste to wealth for ancient Greece. This is a product that is made from byproducts. This is a fish sauce that I constructed for you yesterday, using all of the guts and the blood and salt and herbs of the time. Lovage was a very useful herb of the time. And that'll sit for 90 days and ferment, and the enzymes from the fish's intestines and guts is what causes that fermentation. And it's the same type of fermentation, it's just a different enzyme that you get when you make soy sauce. So think about soy sauce. Soy sauce was being made, at least the written history starts around 500 BCE, China. So they were making something similar. At the same time, they were making something funky and fermented in ancient Greece. So I think that's a really interesting tie-in. And so I'm going to get right into it, you guys. There's a lot to unpack. I'm going to talk a little bit as I go with some of the interesting things as well. But I want to start getting this fish for you so we can get cooking. And I wanted to do this, like I said, because you all have seen a fish. You've all seen a fish gutted. It's not that insane or interesting, maybe. But the interesting part of this is that story of waste to wealth. And without the guts of the fish, you don't have garum. You don't have the East Asian fish sauces either. A lot of those are made in a very similar fashion. You're all familiar with those. So, to gut a mackerel, we start here. Hopefully you can see this okay. We just lightly tip through and come up to the front. And the important part about mackerel in particular is that you have to remove the gills before if you're gonna cook it whole, you need to remove the gills because they'll put an off flavor into the fish. It's really easy to do. You just pull up and you nip it off right here, and then you follow it around. So there's a little spot here, and then you follow this around the gills. Look at that. And then you just reach in and you pull out the guts, or the gills, sorry. The gills are in the bowl. And the same thing for the guts. We're just pulling them out. They all come out fairly easily. I told you, a PSA, right? Blood everywhere. And inside the mackerel, there's a lot of blood. And none of that tastes good in a fish when you're cooking it this way. It tastes great after you ferment it for 90 days, but right now, not so good. So there's a black, you can kind of see it, there's a black film on the inside there. You have to get rid of that. And you just kind of tease it out. All right, and we're going to tease it out right onto our cutting board, all the way through. This is the primo garum. There are lots of recipes for garum in ancient texts. And the great thing is we have ancient texts from there. Like they actually took a lot of notes. So I've got a book by Apicius here. And it's a compilation of recipes from like the 1st century to the 5th century. CE, and every recipe in there has garum. Every single recipe in there almost has garum. They used it in everything. What's the phrase? They used that in everything, right? They literally did. They used it like salt. And obviously we now know that they used it for umami. They didn't know what they were doing. They just knew it tasted good, right? Okay. So we're not going to spend too much more time on this, but you would also rinse this out really well and get rid of all the blood, but the blood then and that water would go into your bowl and then eventually into your jar of garum. And this sometimes would happen right on the boat. So they're cleaning, gutting the fish, and they're saving all the internal parts, and they're making garum. And this is one that I made for you, and it is literally a layer of the salt, a layer of the fish guts, blood, layer of lovage, and then on up. And then again, the enzymes inside of the fish are what cause the fermentation. They turn the proteins into amino acids, and just like you would with any fermentation. So, oh, trash is here. Great. You guys made it through that pretty good with the fish gutting, so I'm proud of you. Good job. Okay. I talked a little bit. I do make garum on my own, and garum in quotes because it's not with fish. I forage for spruce tips in the spring. That's what these are here. And then I freeze them away, and I use them all year long. I forage for mushrooms all year long, different types of mushrooms through the year. And then I roast those mushrooms super dark, and then I do the same thing. I'm layering the super dark mushrooms with salt, with spruce tips, and then the added ingredient here is because I don't have the enzymes from the fish, we have koji, or Aspergillus oryzae, as the fermenting agent. Same thing that you get in a modern-day soy sauce for that fermenting component. So, all right, we're going to make a marinade for this fish. So the marinade is very simple, and this is a common ingredient in a ton of these ancient text recipes. It's a marinade, but it's also a finishing sauce, and it was very simple. So this isn't a complicated thing. We've got a little bit of lemon zest, a little bit of lemon juice, some honey, let me put that over there. Thank you. A little salt, not too much, because we are going to use garum, and it's salty, right? There's about 20% salt salinity in a normal fish sauce. A little fennel pollen here. And I'm going to use my mushroom spruce tip garum that I made for you guys. So this was 90 days fermented. You'll get to try it in the marketplace today. That's the main component of this marinade. And then, thank you. We're going to fortify it with a little bit of the kikkoman tamari. This is the low sodium tamari. Just a little more umami punch in there. All right. And then we'll just mix that up. I don't need that. We'll do that. Man, go ahead. We got a fish. So this is the marinade and the finishing sauce, like I said, so we're going to reserve that for later. By the magic of TV, we've got one that's already marinated for you, and this one's going to go on the grill. The thing is, so I've cleaned this fish. I've put slits down the side so that the marinade can get into it. A lot of modern day recipes, you'll see where they've done that. They're stuffing salt and everything inside the slits. This has got the marinade with the garum for that salty component, and that's going to go right on the grill. Hopefully you can get a good spot there. Thank you. Isn't Rebecca awesome, you guys? Woo! Okay, while the fish cooks, we're going to make a little salad of herbs. Thank you. Mixing bowl. I talked about lovage a little bit. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. I know it grows in California quite a bit. But it's one of those kind of forgotten ingredients that was very common in a lot of the recipes of the era. And it's in the parsley and celery family. So it's got a similar flavor, but it's kind of like an extra punch of celery. It's like celery on crack. It's really, really good. So we're going to take some of those leaves. I like the light ones at the tips. They're a little more tender and a little less bitter.
Chef, approximately how long will a mackerel take to cook on a hot charcoal
It depends
grill?
on the mackerel. There's a bunch of different varieties. This is a Norwegian Somo mackerel. It's probably going to give us 10 minutes on each side at the most, maybe 8 minutes on each side. It's a little fatty, it's a little thick, so. And Rebecca's going to get that for me. So, and then we've got some fennel fronds. We're just going to loosely tear those and throw them in. And we got parsley. This is just a nice, vibrant herb salad. And we're going to use that reserved marinade here. Toss that in, save that. sticking on there. It was okay. So they would have cooked, most likely, over live fire, right? Like they didn't have a rationale or any of those types of equipment, so it would have probably been over live fire. They did have some clay ovens and things like that. Very simple dish here. I think we're okay. And then the last part of this dish is I forage a lot. These are wild ramps, and they're only available in the spring where I'm from, Indiana, Michigan border. But again, I just save them and I freeze them. I cut them up, freeze them, and then I do things with them all year long. Tomorrow we're serving a wild ramp merguez sausage using the same ramps. But today I made a wild ramp olive oil. So to do that, and you can do this with almost any kind of herbaceous, really delicious green. Squeeze out all the water, blanch it, squeeze out all the water, and puree it into oil. Sometimes you put a little salt in there or lemon juice. This is just straight ramp oil. That's looking good. It's looking real good. I think we're gonna. I think we need another minute or so. Yep.
It smells amazing.
Yeah, it smells really good. Can you guys
So
smell it
good.
or no? Yeah.
Breakfast. of
Just what you
champions.
wanted at 9:30 in the morning, like fish guts, right? So I think we'll go with it. Yeah, let's go with it. Yep, straight up. All right. A lot of times people will trim off all the fins and everything, but I kind of love the look of the fins and the eyes and everything in there. You can see what it was. And then we're going to take our greens mix. And I like to stuff just a little bit kind of in the cavity, so it fumigates into the fish a little bit. Yep. And then I've got a few added things. We've got some lemon wedges, supremes. Put a little of the juice on there. These are borage blossoms. These are actually right from here on campus in the garden outside. We've got a little bit of fennel pollen. Fennel was really highly used. A lot of Mediterranean cooking. And then we've got our reserved marinade. Again, it was a marinade and a finishing sauce. This was very common recipe. And then a little bit of ramp oil. And there you have it. Beautiful grilled mackerel.
That's beautiful. One last plate of food.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So, Chef, we have a few minutes, I think, for
Yeah.
questions and thoughts, and maybe I'll start with a question about, remind us, how did you use soy sauce in this preparation? And then maybe a little bit about how, in these modern days, a modern-day chef thinks about using soy sauce together with garum and some of the other ancient techniques that
Yeah, all of these different fish sauces, including the one I made, have a different flavor profile. They really do. From an East Asian fish sauce to a Roman fish sauce, the preparation ends with a different result. And so knowing what that result is going to say, okay, I'm making a recipe. I really want it to have that really funky punch. I really want it to have a more salinity. Some have higher salinity, some have less. And so fortifying it with soy sauce is a really great way to go. And Kikkoman makes some great products that are like low sodium. So if I've already got a really good salty punch, but I just want more funk, then I'll go for the Kikkoman low sodium. I think that's a great option for doing that. And again, it's a similar item. You go back to 500 BCE, they were making the beginnings of soy sauce and the beginnings of Roman garum. So there's a lot of tie in there. And I know Chef's going to talk a little bit about some other fish sauces through the ages. Like this is a thing that happened everywhere, and kind of independently as far as we know. I mean, we don't have perfect documentation on how those things happen, but they kind of happen independently. East Asian fish sauces, Roman garum, soy sauce. Yeah, so there's a lot of tie-ins, but they're very different. So you have to know the flavor profile. As a chef, you just have to know what it tastes like and able to make a great recipe out of it.
So it smelled great when you put the fish on the hot coals.
Yeah.
It smells even better now.
Thanks, chef.
So, any questions from the audience? Yes.
Now, does making garum differ from fish to fish in the species? Can you mix different fish together? Or
Yeah.
why did you use mackerel?
So the question was, does making garum vary from fish to fish? Can you combine different species of fish in one garum? Yeah?
Yeah,
Chef.
I'll answer that as best as I know from reading ancient texts like the Apicius Coconera book. Yes, you can use basically any fish. I'm using one that's common to the region, mackerel, right? It was very commonly found in those recipes, and so it makes a lot of sense. But there's also garums made with anchovies. There's garums made with all kinds of different fish. So yes, 100%. It's all about the live enzymes that live inside of the fish guts that help with the fermentations. And they are made from all different kinds. I mean, East Asian fish sauces are definitely made with different fish than the Roman ones were.
And the enzymes themselves are probably essentially the same
Yeah.
from species to
Yeah.
species. They might taste different based on
You got
their environment.
Staph enzymes and all kinds of different, they're all basically the same. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
Could you describe the difference between the East Asian and the Roman garum salt?
So the question is, can you describe the difference between East Asian and Roman garums, and maybe how they sort of now are different today? And Jordan,
Yeah.
maybe you'll talk about that as well.
I think Jordan's going to talk about that. I'll give you my take on it. And this, again, I'm not a food historian, so just from my curiosity, this is what I know, is that Roman garum, just from a flavor profile, is slightly sweeter to me. The East Asian are more astringent to me when I taste them. But the process of making them is very, very similar. It's still, fish, salt, enzymes, fish, salt, and water. And the process is similar. I mean, obviously, modern techniques are different than, the Romans or the Greeks. They would have had these big clay amphora, which are big clay pots that they stored everything in, like olive oil and definitely fish sauce. And there's plenty of archaeological records of that. They made those, and they stick them out in the sun for 90 days. That's not how fish sauce is made in East Asia anymore. So, but it probably had similar roots. Yeah.
Well, and even with soy sauce, the way soy sauce was made centuries ago is, aside from modern technology helping with food safety and stuff, there's a lot of similarities, especially the traditionally brewed ones.
Yeah, we have the benefit of science now, which they didn't really have. They were just, this tastes good. Let's just leave it out a little longer.
And if somebody gets sick, then they know, maybe we won't do that one again.
Yeah, they didn't live as long, I think. So, yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions? Yes.
Just a question about pulling umami out of plants as compared to always using
That's a great question.
animals, and how we can get that flavor from different plants.
So the question is, how do we pull umami from plants versus animals, and is there really a difference? Chef, you made 2 garums. One is plant-based and one is fish-based.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about converting proteins, and there are proteins in all different things, right? So in this one, I'm using Aspergillus oryzae, which is koji. It's controllable. I know exactly what to do with it. I know how it's going to mold, and if it molds differently, I know that's not right. So I can make that. But it's converting those proteins into amino acids. That's what really gives you the umami from the sauces. And it's the same process. It's just a different enzyme that's doing the work, right? Did I answer that well?
Well, I think, and I might add that really the technique is fermentation, both with garum and with soy sauce. And soy sauce is water, wheat, soy, and salt. So there's no animal in soy sauce. So it's really a fermentation process, and Aspergillus is added at the very beginning. So I think the process is similar, but I think there's different sensibilities and techniques that go through the fermentation process between them.
Yeah, again, it's just converting those proteins. So I mean, protein in soybeans, proteins in mushrooms in this example. And you'll end up with a very different flavor depending on what you're starting with. Definitely my mushroom garum doesn't taste anything like, well, maybe not anything like, it does taste a little like soy sauce, but it's different because, I've got different ingredients in the build and they all come out in the end to create a different flavor profile.
One thing I might also add is that amino acids are available in both animals and plants. And we crave amino acids because amino acids are the building blocks of our bodies. And so fruits and vegetables that are high in amino acids work very well in this kind of a process that we're talking about and extracting umami. Tomatoes, almonds, things that you wouldn't necessarily expect are high in amino acids. Any other questions? Well, our timing is great. Now it's time for Chef Jordan to take the floor, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. A pleasure to be here today to talk to you about garum and fish sauce in the ancient Mediterranean. Quickly, before I start talking about garum, I'm really interested in how food cultures kind of move and travel within the Mediterranean region. But although the theme of the conference this year is kind of Mediterranean food cultures, I always think it's kind of important to stress that there is no such thing as Mediterranean cuisine. There are Mediterranean cuisines, plural, but there's no kind of unified, homogenized cuisine that comes from this part of the world. The first time that anybody ever conceptualized and wrote the idea of a Mediterranean cuisine was only in 1950. It was the English food writer Elizabeth David. She wrote a very famous book called A Book of Mediterranean Food. And that was the first time ever that anybody had ever used that geographical label to tie the cuisines of all of these very different countries together. And that's, I think, an interesting and a strange thought, because now Mediterranean is such like a buzzword, right? Anytime something's got olive oil or tomatoes or oregano in it, it's Mediterranean food. But that was only 75 years ago, the first time that kind of ever happened. And well, I guess this is the 75th anniversary of Mediterranean food. So it's an interesting thought, though, how recently that happened, and how much we now kind of talk about it, and how we, I suppose, group a very diverse range of cuisines under one umbrella. That said, what you do have is 3,000 plus years of cultural exchange between all of these different cuisines. And you have that kind of unifying body of sea, which has facilitated a huge amount of kind of cultural exchange through trade, through migration, through travel. And so, although I don't believe that there is a kind of Mediterranean cuisine, I think you do have an underlying thread of connections and exchanges and ingredients and techniques that have traveled between those countries. And that's what I'm really interested in exploring, and what I'll talk to you about a little bit today as we kind of dig into the roots of fish sauce and where that culture came from. I'm also going to talk a bit about how it disappeared. As Chef just pointed out, it was a really ubiquitous culture. The entire Mediterranean at one point, I think Italy, Spain, Greece, Morocco, Lebanon, Syria, they cooked with fish sauce in the same way that Southeast Asian countries now cook with fish sauce. And that's a wild thought, because you simply don't think of the cuisines of those countries using fish sauce. And today, they don't. There's one very, very there's a few tiny remnants that are still here. I'm going to make one of them for you today, which is it's a spaghetti dish from a small fishing town called Cetara. It's on the Amalfi Coast in Campania. And it's a very simple dish. If you've ever had spaghetti aglio olio, then you've almost had this. The difference is that I'm going to add a little bit of the fish sauce that we're talking about. And it's a typical dish from this part of Italy, typical dish from this village, really, from this fishing village. And it all kind of ties into the story and the wider history of fish sauce in the Mediterranean region. The dish is quite quick to make, and I've got quite a lot of time. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit from my notes about some of the histories of fish sauce and where it comes from. Again, as we've just heard, umami, I think we often think of umami almost as a Japanese concept, right? And there's a good reason for that. It was kind of discovered in Japan by a Japanese chemist in 1908. The same chemist who figured out how to synthesize MSG. So a man who made the world a tastier place, for sure. But again, as Chef kind of pointed out, it's not so much that it was discovered or created in that moment. It's just that we gave it a vocabulary. We understood how to recognize it, where to find it, how to make it. But as we were just talking about, you find umami naturally all over the natural world. And really what you find is naturally occurring MSG. So things like parmesan, things like mushrooms, ripe tomatoes, cooked meat, even human breast milk, all contain MSG. So it's a compound, it's a taste, a savoriness and a roundness that we've searched for kind of forever as humans in our food. We're naturally predisposed to seek out this flavor. And I think that's quite interesting because it makes sense that we've made it for so long, that we've fermented things, dried things, salted things, which are all the processes that kind of create MSG and take us towards umami. I know that MSG isn't always popular, but the history of that opinion is flawed. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I think that everybody should seek out more of it in their cooking. The dish I'm going to make is I want to use it to illustrate the history of fish sauce and our kind of continuous human search for umami. I'm going to cook spaghetti. I'm going to make a very simple sauce based on olive oil with garlic. I've got a little bit of parsley, some chili, and then at the end I'll add the fish sauce, which is just going to kind of tie everything together. And I think that's what I love when you cook with things like fish sauce, soy sauce, anchovy pastes. They can really kind of bridge different ingredients and flavors and kind of round everything out, really pull stuff together. I'm going to touch on a couple of interesting bits of history while we get warmed up here. Even though a lot of the vocabulary that we use around these ancient fish sauces, when we talk about garum, liquamen, all these kind of things, comes from the Roman Empire. Fish sauce predates the Roman Empire, even predates ancient Greece. The earliest evidence for fish sauce comes from the Phoenicians, who are quite a fascinating civilization. They were the first people to travel and trade across the Mediterranean. They established the first kind of trade network and port cities around the Mediterranean. And their culture really was absorbed into ancient Greek culture and then into ancient Roman culture. So they were kind of a lost civilization until the 20th century. But we now know that they contributed a huge amount to not just food, certainly to food. They were making fish sauces, but also just to civilization in general. The world's first written alphabet, for example. A lot of technologies to do with shipbuilding and navigation, and they kind of set off that chain reaction of Mediterranean food, kind of cultural exchange, if you like. Again, as Chef said, the fish sauce during the Roman Empire was a real big business. It was a big industry. They had, industrial scale factories making this stuff in Spain and across North Africa and in southern Italy. And you had kind of different brands. You had, makers who were famous. It sold for the same price as fine wine. It was a really kind of prized thing. Not just kind of like a rustic peasant tradition, but something that kind of, I guess a bit like wine, went across a huge scale from kind of cheap and cheerful every day, all the way to kind of really prized high-end garums. I'm using a garum here, which is kind of a revival. These guys in southern Spain are making this. But also in Cetara, where I mentioned earlier, you kind of have these very small artisanal producers who make garum. To be honest, because I write recipes for people to cook at home, and this product is quite expensive and quite difficult to get hold of, I actually use Southeast Asian fish sauce as a substitute whenever I write recipes. As we were just talking about, they are very similar in the way that they're made and the flavor profile, and you can achieve, when you're cooking with it in a dish, something almost identical. So you don't necessarily need to seek out these. They're quite hard to find. They're made in a very similar way, and the flavor that you get from them is very similar as well. I'll quickly tell you about why fish sauce disappeared, and then I'll crack on with cooking. I think this is really interesting because, how does an entire region suddenly stop using something that they seasoned food with as commonly as salt? It's kind of a two-factor disappearance. You've got the fall of the Roman Empire, primarily. So all of those kind of trade networks collapsed. The demand disappeared, and the factories closed down. But alongside that, really interestingly, you have the adoption of Christianity by the Roman Empire. And those kind of dark, rich, funky, fermented foods were viewed as kind of impure. And they began to kind of become unpopular. And they moved away from making them as the empire kind of adopted Christianity. And that, combined with the collapse of the trade networks, really meant that this seasoning and this entire industry disappeared from the whole region. And it's only kind of now, I think really excitingly, that it is being brought back, which is great, and people are rediscovering it, how you can use it in Mediterranean food without it necessarily feeling like fusion cooking. And I think that's quite cool. It's kind of it's like a rediscovery more than a fusion, and that's quite nice, where you're kind of bridging these historical gaps. I'm going to start cooking some spaghetti. Let me put this here. I'll tell you a little bit about the pasta that I'm using. I don't need all of this. This is the Culinary Institute of America, so we should dive a little bit into the science of good pasta cookery. I'm using actually, let me grab, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'm using a pasta which is extruded through a bronze die. And this is kind of significant because when you make pasta cheaply, they make a dough and they press it through a Teflon die, so it's a non-stick die. And what that means is that you can make pasta really quickly, right? Because it doesn't heat up. You can just press it through. It's like those Play-Doh machines that you have as a kid. And you can just press it through, and it will kind of keep going, and then they dry it quickly, and they ship it quickly, and that's how you make lots of pasta quickly and cheaply. But when you use a bronze die, everything happens a little bit more slowly. So it's coming through metal. They have to do it slower so it doesn't heat up. But what you get is this surface texture to the pasta, which is kind of a bit rough and a bit mottled. And that's a good thing. We like that when we're cooking with dried pasta, because you get a greater release of starch from inside the pasta into your cooking water, and that's really useful. We're going to use that starchy pasta water to build the base of our sauce here. And I'm going to start with some olive oil, and we're going to fragrance the olive oil with garlic more than kind of, I am going to cook the garlic, but I'm not going to brown it off. I don't want it to go kind of too brown. I don't want it to go crunchy. I just want that really kind of delicate, soft flavor of garlic to infuse the oil. I might actually put a little bit more. Sorry. Thank you. Let's go a little bit more like that. And I can put this in pretty much from the beginning. So I can start, doing its work, flavoring the oil. I think there's a bit of a misconception in Italian cooking that it's full of garlic, and it's not really. This dish has a reasonable amount of garlic in, but very often with Italian food you find actually just a little piece of garlic, quite often left whole and then taken out. So they want that gentle fragrance and aroma, which is what we're going for here. And I just leave this on quite a low heat while the pasta cooks. This is one of those nice things that you can make, in a weeknight where the sauce takes no longer to make than the pasta takes to boil. So that's always quite a nice it's a good one to have up your sleeve. In here, I've got some breadcrumbs which have been toasted off. And we're going to use these to finish the dish. And again, this is quite a typical thing. If you're in southern Italy, if you're in Sicily, you very often find pasta finished with breadcrumbs rather than cheese. And that comes from, just go low, thank you. That comes from, various different traditions. One is using up leftover bread, and the other is cost. It's much cheaper to finish a pasta with breadcrumbs, and we're talking about an area of Italy that is historically much poorer than the north. So I've got some breadcrumbs there. They added like a really lovely texture as well, which I think is quite nice, a little kind of crunch. So you can see in here that this water is getting nice and cloudy, and that's our starch being released. And that starch is really going to act as a glue and mean that we can mix a certain amount of water with our oil, which obviously is normally a difficult thing to achieve. They naturally, want to separate. They don't want to combine. But the starch in here is going to help us do that. I'm just, you can see, not really browning the garlic. I'm just letting it kind of really, really gently just like soften. It's going to be mellow. We want it to be a little bit sweet. And I'm just going to give this pasta a little bit longer. Let me go back to my notes and see what other fun facts about fish sauce I have for you. Wow, there's so much to talk about. Done all of that. Okay, great. We're back to the pasta.
Chef, I have a question.
Yeah,
I think
please.
it's settled law, culinary law, that you salt water that you cook pasta in.
Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of discussion recently about, are we seasoning it like the sea or a sauce these
Seasoning.
days, especially when you're using it as part of your... So I just wonder if you have a perspective on how much salt you use in pasta water.
I tell you, I actually committed a culinary sin and assumed that this was salted before I started. It wasn't. Season like the sea is a funny one, right? If you watch like British food television, there'd always be a middle-aged chef wearing a gilet telling you that in Italy they say you should season your pasta water like the sea. They definitely don't. Seawater is intensely salty, right? It's kind of savagely salty. It burns. What you actually want is pasta water that's seasoned to the point where it tastes pleasant. It should taste like ready salted crisps. That's like the level of salt that you want. You want it to kind of, I know it sounds strange because it's salty water, but you want it to taste nice, basically. I would adjust how much you season your pasta water depending on what kind of pasta you're making. So if you're making something that's got a lot of salt in the sauce, something like a carbonara, or if you're making a dish like this, where I'm going to finish the sauce with a lot of the water that I cook the pasta in, I'm going to put a little bit less salt in there. Because as this kind of reduces down in my second pan, that salt concentration is going to build as the water evaporates. And so if this is very salty, this could quite easily end up too salty. If you were making pasta with ragu, for example, and you were not really going to use very much of the water at all to finish the pasta, then it could be a little bit saltier. And I would also definitely put the salt in before you put the pasta in, unlike what I've just done. All right, let's have a look here, because you will see, often people talk about cooking pasta until it's al dente, which is nice. But we're going to go a little bit before al dente. I'm going to take the pasta out quite early. So this is kind of ordinarily probably 2-3 minutes before al dente. I'm going to take it out now and put it into my pan with the oil. I'm going to finish cooking it in here with quite a lot of this water. And that's because, again, we're kind of increasing that starch concentration. We're just like really building up. So I can take the pasta straight out like this, and you can see the water coming off. That's a good thing. We're going to keep that in here. I don't want to fry the pasta in the oil. I want to keep cooking it and start to build that emulsion of oil and water and kind of bring those two things which don't normally come together. So we can just take all of that out. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. And then I'm going to use a lot of this water. So let's start with a couple of ladlefuls, like this. And this is why you can see that I don't want that too salty, because this would, we'd be in trouble. So you can hear the change as well. When I first put the pasta in, it was almost frying in the oil, and I don't want that. Now that I've added enough water, oh, that's hot, sorry. Now that I've added enough water, you can see it cooking, and you can kind of see the water bubbling up through the oil. So we can start just moving this around in the pan. This is still boiling, so it's cooking in a very similar way to how it was cooking here. Yeah, we can leave it there. I might take some more water, thank you. So I'm going to start moving the pasta like this. Let me turn that up a little bit. Oh yeah, perfect. And the agitation of the pasta and the oil and the water all together is another kind of very important step. They call this mantecare in Italian. And it's a very similar way that you finish pasta, that you finish risotto. And what we're basically doing is combining fat and water and starch all together to make a creamy emulsion. And that's why I'm taking the pasta out really quite early. I had a real kind of bite. That center there is still quite crunchy. And this is now just going to kind of reduce down. The starch is going to act as a bit of a glue and just build our sauce for us. And I'm going to finish it just at the end with some parsley, a little bit of chili. That's optional, but I like it. And the last thing to go in will be the fish sauce. With this pasta, I quite like to take it off the heat and then add the fish sauce right at the end, just so that you keep kind of some of those lighter, sweeter, like Chef was saying, sweeter flavors of the fish sauce. So we're kind of getting there. Now, at this point, you can see when I lift up the pasta, you see everything's still just dripping off. That means that we're not there yet. We need to keep going. But let's give it another minute or two. And it's one of those things that kind of, it goes slowly, 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 and then all at once, you're there. Very nice. It's a good question. It's another one of the talking points that I didn't get to in my notes there. But in antiquity, when they made fish sauces, they had them in these amphora, and they were divided by category according to quality. And that top layer, the clear top layer, the garum, was the most prized and the most expensive. In the middle, you have a slightly cloudier layer, which they called liquamen. And the liquamen would have been your kind of secondary offering. And then in the bottom, you would have the anchovy paste, the leftover anchovy paste. And perhaps the best way that you can think about that is almost like a fish miso, right? It's that kind of very intense, strong paste left in the bottom of the barrel or the bottom of the amphora. And that would have been the cheapest product. And so they were kind of, they were used by different levels of Roman society according to quality and according to cost. Historians have, debates over those exact kind of names. Sometimes garum and liquamen were used interchangeably, and it's not always that exact kind of hierarchy, but that's our best guess. That's kind of what they think it was. And so this fleur de garum, a bit like fleur de sel, would be your kind of top layer offering. All right, now with my pasta, you can see that I'm kind of very nearly here. That oil in the bottom of the pan is becoming quite nice and thick, and we've achieved what physics says you can't, and we've combined oil and water together thanks to the magic of starch. So it's still running off, but it's like thicker, it's kind of glossier, it's really coming together. And this is when you can start to really move your pasta around. Really agitate that starch, really get it all kind of work nicely together. And here, almost, this is when it all happens at once. There we go. Yeah, so once you have this kind of quite, I don't know how well you can see that over there, but this real glossy shine when the strands of the pasta all begin to kind of stick together. That's when you've achieved that emulsion that you're looking for. So at this point, I can turn it off the heat. And now I'm going to add my parsley. Just a little bit of parsley to kind of add some freshness, some color. Perfect. Good timing. A little bit of chili. And then finally, my fish sauce. That smells very, very good. I would probably start with about a teaspoon of this per person. You can always add more. Southeast Asian fish sauces tend to be a little stronger, so you might need a little bit less. But let's go with that, and you can smell it's got that real kind of sea, clean, marine kind of sea flavor. And that's our pasta done. So we can just, here, this is a good trick for you. If you take your pasta like this, right, and you put it into the bowl, and then you just turn the bowl as you let it down. You get some nice little nests of pasta there. And then finally, I'll finish it with my breadcrumbs, give it a little wipe. And that's 3,000 years of Mediterranean food history in a bowl. There we go.
Thank you. That looks beautiful.
No worries.
You know that Jordan is a great chef because he finished literally 10 seconds before due date. So we have about 5 minutes for any final questions or thoughts specifically for Jordan at the moment. Yes.
And this isn't to catch someone, this is for my own understanding.
Sure.
Somebody said that something about naturally occurring MSG.
Yes.
And I think that's wrong, because MSG is a component, right? It's naturally occurring glutamic acid.
That's
Is
correct.
that true?
Yeah.
So let me quickly, so that the live stream can hear. The question is about MSG, and is there such a thing as naturally occurring MSG, or is it a manufactured?
I mean, yeah, I don't know about you, Chef. My understanding is that there is absolutely naturally occurring MSG, monosodium glutamate. There is a lot of food in the natural world that is high in glutamic acid. So, like those examples of foods that we were talking about for being high in umami, the reason they are high in umami is because they contain naturally occurring MSG. So, things like mushrooms, tomatoes, Parmesan cheese. I think I read that Parmesan cheese has about 1 gram of MSG per 100 grams of cheese.
I agree with that. And if you want sort of a physical example, if you eat Parmesan cheese or even some really terrific cheddars, you can, on your mouth, on your palate, you can feel little crystals that you actually,
A little crunch, yeah,
they give a
absolutely.
little crunch. And those, I believe, are manifestations of glutamic acid, and which is a part of MSG. So maybe there's exploration to do, but I think the consensus between the three of us is it's naturally
My
occurring.
understanding is that the glutamic acids are what gives the umami, and MSG is a manufactured product. But yeah, maybe a little more research needs to be done by this team. I don't want to say it's right or wrong. I do think that there's a million things in the natural world that have glutamic acid in it, and so you can add things, obviously mushrooms is a great example, right? They're full of them. So you're adding umami without even having to do some fermentation to get those amino acids to produce. I think there's so much glutamic acid or glutamates out there, and they're naturally occurring far more than there are produced products that create MSG or create that same umami. So.
I mean, it is, and this is slightly off topic, but I do think it's interesting. I think the unfair malignment of MSG, the history around that is really interesting, going back to the 1960s. I don't want to get too deep, but it comes from, well, essentially racism. The idea of kind of Chinese restaurant syndrome and, you know, this idea of MSG giving you a headache and all of this kind of thing actually comes from quite a dark and unpleasant anti-Asian bit of kind of racist rhetoric. And yeah, you in fact find the very compound that they said was giving you a headache by eating Chinese food in Italian food, in, you know, Japanese food, in all of these other cuisines that are really kind of highly regarded. So, yeah, I wouldn't be too scared of it myself.
And if you don't know about that flawed history, you used the word flawed, which I like, it's easy to find on the internet and find all kinds of both conspiracy theories and also more factual information about the origin of those stories. Any last questions? I would like to thank all of you for attending. I would like to thank Kikkoman for its generosity in sponsoring the conference and also this presentation. And as I thank our two presenting chefs, I'd like for Chef Rebecca to come out as well. Yeah. In the middle, Chef, in the middle.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you, Chef.
Thank you to all three of you. And if you have any, we have a couple seconds, any final thoughts or recommendations?
Just a big thank you for all coming to hear us talk. Thank you to Kikkoman as well for sponsoring us. That's very generous.
Thanks for not being squeamish about the
As the
blood and
breakfast
guts.
of champions.
Yeah, it was awesome presenting for you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you can have you can enjoy what Chef Nathaniel presented today at the Kikkoman Marketplace Lunch. So please come by, and I think you can find Jordan milling around. You don't have a table?
I don't, but tomorrow I'm demoing a different dish, and that will be served at the marketplace.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to Peanuts in the Plant Forward Kitchen. I'm Ashton Pelham. Today we're diving into performance nutrition, specifically how peanuts help fuel athletes at every level. I'm thrilled to be joined by Chef Tony, who is going to share some tips for athletes to stay fueled, focused, and ready to compete. Athletes push their bodies to the limit, so what they eat matters. I think you're going to share a recipe that can help with post-game or post-workout recovery. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I'm making a protein peanut butter smoothie. This smoothie is perfect for recovery. Peanut butter aids athlete recovery by providing a combination of protein, good fats, and other essential nutrients that help repair muscle damage, replenish energy stores, and reduce inflammation. Specifically, the protein content supports muscle repair and growth, while the good fats sustain energy and contribute to reducing inflammation and muscle soreness.
Wow, Chef Tony, that was really informative. Can you tell me what else is in the smoothie other than peanut butter?
We have some peanut protein powder that we're going to mix with some cocoa powder, and we're mixing it in a bowl because What'll happen is if we don't, sometimes it'll tend to clump around the sides of the blender.
Okay.
And then we also have some frozen bananas.
Okay.
So I'm going to put those in here first. And then we have peanut butter.
Now, does it matter how much peanut butter? Is it to your liking?
It's kind of to your liking.
Okay.
I feel like if you go too heavy, it'll tend to get really thick, but you can always add more oat milk if you need. We're gonna add in some vanilla extract. We're gonna pour our peanut powder and cocoa mixture on top.
Wow.
The last thing is we have some ice and we have some oat milk.
And this is so easy. It's so fast to make.
This is like you wake up late and you have to hurry.
Which I so often do.
Start it on low, make sure your blending's on low, and then slowly increase it.
Okay.
All right. And then it nice is made. All right, and then we're gonna add the ice.
Oh, wow.
All right. And that's it.
And that's it?
That's it.
That was super fast. Now, with all the training and the on-the-go lifestyle, this looks like a quick and easy way for athletes to get the fuel they need on the go.
Yes, peanuts and peanut butter are an automatic go-to because it's shelf stable and helps you sustain your energy without crashing.
Okay, well, let's give this delicious shake a try. All right, and cheers.
Cheers.
Yes. Delicious. This is amazing. Quick, easy, and on the go, full of protein and all the nutrients, huh?
Absolutely.
Wow, well, thank you, Chef Tony, for joining us today. Clearly, peanuts are a powerful player in any athlete's meal plan and a secret weapon for chefs who want to keep their teams energized and ready to win. Thanks for watching Peanuts in the Plant Forward Kitchen. I'm Ashton Pelham. See you next time. And Chef, before you go, I'm definitely gonna need this recipe.
These crispy Vietnamese spring rolls, or chua zo, are traditionally made filled with Whittier mushrooms, vermicelli noodles, pork, and sometimes shrimp, though this can vary regionally. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a vegetarian version, filled with tofu and vegetables in place of pork and shrimp. In Vietnam, these spring rolls are enjoyed as an appetizer, like we'll demonstrate here, or as a topping on bún chả. First, let me show you how to make the filling. Heat canola oil in a skillet over medium heat. Add lemongrass, shallots, and carrots, and saute them until they're fragrant, about 3 minutes. Next, stir in rehydrated and minced Whittier mushrooms, cooked and chopped vermicelli noodles, and some tofu. I'm using Nasoya organic extra firm tofu that I've crumbled. Add soy sauce, oyster sauce, and palm sugar, and cook for another 4 minutes, stirring to incorporate. Remove from the heat and allow the filling to cool completely. This is key in order to prevent soggy spring rolls. Now I'll show you how to assemble the spring rolls. You can lightly brush the edges of the Nasoya egg roll wrap with some cornstarch paste to ensure a really secure seal. I've made that by cooking equal parts cornstarch to water to make a little egg roll glue. Place about 2 tablespoons of the cooled filling in the center of each egg roll wrapper. I'm using Nasoya egg roll wraps for this because they hold up well and crisp up beautifully when they're fried. Fold the bottom corner over the filling, then fold in the sides. From there, roll the filling tightly so it's sealed. Let's go ahead and finish assembling the rest of our spring rolls. You can make these in advance and refrigerate them until you're ready to serve them. Now we're ready to fry our spring rolls. Heat oil in a deep skillet or pot to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Fry the spring rolls in batches for 2.5 to 3 minutes or until they're golden and crispy. Drain them on a wire rack or paper towels to maintain their crispiness. Arrange the spring rolls on a platter with lettuce leaves, fresh herbs, and some pickled carrot, cucumber, and daikon. Serve with ngoc cham dipping sauce or sweet chili sauce on the side.
I'm Brandon Collins, Corporate Executive Chef for Unilever Food Solutions North America. And what we're gonna make today is a Masa takoyaki. So if you think about the Japanese takoyakis, right, the beautiful little octopus balls that are topped with bonito and all this absolute deliciousness, we're gonna put a little bit of a Oaxacan spin on it. So first we're gonna make octopus that we're gonna poach in a Nor caldo de vegetales broth with a little bit of cumin, garlic, shallots, lime, orange, and we're also gonna use some allspice. Really cool thing about allspice that I learned during our time there in Oaxaca was they used it for black pepper, right? Black pepper wasn't prevalent, so they would use allspice as that sort of seasoning, which is really cool. So trying to make sure that that gets into the flavor profile as well. And then after we poach that, we're gonna make a takoyaki batter, but we're gonna use masa instead of whole wheat or wheat flour that is then drizzled with a lime and cilantro aioli utilizing Hellmann's Real Mayonnaise. And then we're going to top it with a squash blossom and hoja santa slaw. It's gonna be exciting. Can't wait to get started. All right, so now we are going to make the poaching liquid for the octopus. So we're gonna start with about a tablespoon of vegetable oil or olive oil or whatever oil you have, avocado, whatever you wanna use. And then we are going to add our shallots. So these are just sliced shallots. We're just gonna throw those in there. We don't really wanna get any color or anything on them. We're just trying to sweat them out a little bit. We have some whole garlic cloves as well that we're just gonna throw right in there as well. And then we're also going to add our whole spices. You can do these, if you have them whole, we're gonna add them now. If you're using them ground, we're gonna add them a little bit later in the process. But all of our allspice and all of our coriander, we're just gonna sweat these out a little bit just to try to release some of the flavor before we add the water and the caldo and the citrus. And we're putting the spices in now because spices are fat soluble, right? So you wanna get all that flavor in there before you add the water. If I was doing ground, I would add them now. Beautiful. Again, we're just trying to wake it up a little bit. Don't have to go too crazy because these are gonna be cooking for the next 3-4 hours. So we're gonna take our water, about a gallon of water, right into the pot. We can turn the heat up a bit, and we're gonna add 1 cup of the caldo de vegetales. Nice level cup. Put that right in. Stir that up. Now as that comes up to a simmer, we are also going to add some orange and lime juice. Squeeze them, drop them in. Squeeze them and drop them in. It's good to get all of that flavor of that orange in there. We're gonna do the same thing with the limes. Squeeze and drop. Then what we're gonna do is, once this comes up to a simmer, we're gonna turn it down and then we're going to add our octopus to it and we're gonna let that slowly simmer for about 3 to 4 hours actually, just until it's tender and beautiful. So it's come up to a boil. We're gonna turn this down now to a simmer, and then we are going to slowly dump in our octopus. We want this to be at a very, very low, slow cook, just so that way it will end up being nice and tender and not overly tough and chewy. So we're gonna let this go low and slow again for about 3.5 hours until it's nice and tender. And then we're gonna cool it down in its liquid. And then what we're gonna end up doing is whenever we go to use it, we're gonna take that liquid and use that to make our batter. All right, so our octopus is cooled down. We've removed it from the liquid. We've reserved that liquid. We're gonna set this aside for a little bit later on in the recipe. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna make our batter. So we have our 4 whole eggs that we're gonna put into the bowl. We're gonna whisk those up. Just until they're combined. You don't have to really add a ton of air to them. Make sure they're broken up. All right, now we're gonna add our poaching liquid. right? This has got the citrus, the coriander, the onion, all of that octopus flavor in there as well. It also has the nor caldo de vegetales in there. And then now I have the masa, right? This is 2.5 cups of a blue corn heirloom masa. It's going to go right into this batter. And because we're using a good high quality masa, we may have to add a little bit of liquid to this to adjust it as it starts to thicken and absorb all of that water. And also, there's no gluten in masa, right? So we can kind of agitate it as much as we want. So we are definitely going to need to add a little bit more water to this. So while we're adding more liquid to this, what we're looking for is the consistency of like a thin pancake batter, right? We want that to not be too thick. We're not trying to actually make like tortillas or anything like that out of it. But we also are trying to make sure that it's viscous enough to be able to hold up whenever we put the octopus in it, right? So think if you're making a crepe or something along that line. So I added about another cup of water just to get to this consistency, and this is exactly what we're looking for. All right. All right, now we're going to chop up the octopus, right? It's chilled, it cooled down in its own sort of court bouillon. We're just going to chop this up. Now it's going to go inside the batter, right, whenever we make the takoyaki. So we just want it into pieces. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not looking for anything super crazy, but we do want to make sure that it gets chopped up so that way it does actually fit inside the balls themselves. We're going to turn it around, and we're just only going to chop up what we need, right? The rest of it we can reserve for later as we need it. We just want to make sure that we get a decent enough size that it gives you good texture. So right around this. You don't need anything crazy. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? It's going inside the dough ball. So I think that's all we're going to need for one batch. All right, so now we're going to chiffonade out some hoja santa. So the holy leaf, it's in a lot of dishes in Oaxaca, and what they do is they usually put it in the tortillas themselves. Has kind of an anise, root beer, sassafras sort of flavor. It's also known as the root beer leaf as well. So just like you would any other green, you're going to remove that sort of stem as much as you need to, and then we're going to lay it out. It smells like root beer. It's absolutely amazing. Just going to roll them up, and we're going to chiffonade these. Just like you would basil or anything along that line. You want to do this as close to when you're getting ready to use it as possible, right? Because at the end of the day, like all greens, they will start to bruise. Using a sharp knife also is of benefit. If you can't find hoja santa, you could easily use fennel fronds. You could use actual just pieces of fennel as well. But yeah, take all of this, put it right in the bowl. Now we're going to make a cilantro lime aioli. We're going to do it real quick utilizing Hellmann's reel. And so we're going to do a 1/2 cup of mayo, the juice of 1 lime. Make sure we get all that juice out of there. And 2 tablespoons of chopped cilantro. In Oaxaca, they have a special cilantro called cilantro criollo. That is somebody who has the gene that everything tastes like soap whenever I eat cilantro. It was absolutely delicious. All right, and that's it. Super simple aioli that's going to be a drizzle for our takoyaki. So we're going to spray the takoyaki maker. We're going to pour our batter in. Now we're going to put our octopus in. Get that octopus down in there. Let them cook so that way they sear on the outside so that we can eventually get them to break free. So that way we can rotate them. Just keep rolling them around till you get the color that you're looking for, that nice sort of golden. They're not always going to be perfect. You do want to make sure they're cooked all the way through. So leave them in there for a little while. Nice and golden brown. That blue masa looks really cool. And the ones that aren't super pretty, Scooby snacks for the staff. There we go. So we have our blue corn masa takoyakis ready to rock and roll. Now we're going to garnish them. So we're going to take some squash blossoms, right? Think of like bonito flakes and the way that they react with the takoyaki. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to remove that stem and we're going to kind of tear them into pieces, right? So we're going to have that, and we have our hoja santa as well. So first, we're going to drizzle our cilantro lime aioli over the top. Don't be shy, it's delicious. Take some of these beautiful squash blossoms, kind of lay them throughout the top, use them as a wonderful flavoring agent as well. And then we're going to take some of this hoja santa, this root beer leaf, beautiful, the anise, the root beer, the sassafras flavor. And there we go. Our blue corn masa takoyaki with cilantro lime aioli, topped with squash blossoms and hoja santa.
One of the most delicious and iconic comfort foods in Europe is musaka and its many variations depending on where it's made. Musaka is cousins with shepherd's pie and is a layered eggplant or potato-based dish, often including ground meat, tomato, and a top layer of custardy bechamel sauce. Musaka is a 13th century dish from the Arabian Levant. Today, it's enjoyed all over the Balkans and the Middle East, and it has many local and regional variations, from hot to cold, with or without eggplant, filled with beef or lamb, and everything in between depending on its origin. In the same spirit, I'm making this delicious layered dish inspired by Bulgaria's musaka, Malta's timpana, and Cyprus's macaronia tu furnu, using ingredients from all over the European Union. The first step is to prepare the hotel pan. I'll butter the pan with this garlic and herb butter from France, which will add some creaminess. Next, I'll cover the butter with some crushed potato chips. I'm using truffle and Irish butter potato chips from Ireland for their intense truffle flavor. As the base of the dish, I'm making a twist on the traditional savory meat and tomato stew. To give my stew some umami sweetness and a different textural element, I'm starting by using the oil from the EU organic dried cherry tomatoes from Spain. The EU organic label ensures that the product is safely made, following strict regulations, and with respect for the environment. You will find musaka made with ground beef, pork, or lamb, but I'm making this version using cotechino Modena, a traditional cooked pork sausage from Modena, which has PGI or Protected Geographical Indication status, meaning it's a product deeply rooted in its origin, with most of its production taking place right in Modena, Italy. The rich and savory flavor of the sausage pairs beautifully with other European ingredients in this dish. Mediterranean appetizer of fried eggplant and peppers from Bulgaria is a great product to use because the fried eggplant and peppers are already mixed with flavorful tomatoes, garlic, herbs, and spices. Add the dried cherry tomatoes. Red onion preserve from Romania adds a sweet and savory flavor. Add a bit of sweet paprika from Hungary for a sweet smokiness. The product holds a PDO, or Protected Designation of Origin status, meaning that every part of production, processing, and preparation must take place in the region of its geographic origin. I'm adding a splash of Slovenska Istra, a Cabernet Sauvignon from Slovenia that also holds PDO, or Protected Designation of Origin status, meaning it's crafted entirely in its home region, capturing bold notes of black currant, blackberry, and a hint of black pepper. I'm giving our musaka an elevated and fun twist by topping it with a whipped herb and truffle potato chip flavored bechamel. I was inspired to use potato chips in the topping since it reminded me of the instant mashed potatoes that so many of us grew up eating. I'm using more of the truffle and Irish butter potato chips and bringing them to a boil in water. These get blended with a little more of the garlic and herb butter from France. Pour the stew into a prepared pan. As you can see, the bechamel is looking so delicious and is going to be the perfect creamy counterpart to the rich stew. I also added a crispy garnish of crushed potato chips, a sprinkle of Portuguese sea salt, and a bit more of the red onion preserves on the side, with a dusting of sweet paprika from Hungary. This musaka is such a rich and comforting dish with so many layers of intense flavor. I love this comforting and end of summer recipe because it reimagines the iconic dish through a modern lens by using high quality ingredients and showcasing regional depth and cross-cultural inspiration.